Okay, let's unpack this. Ever think about how even something that feels totally solid, like this table, is actually a buzz of activity?
Like it's not really solid at all.
Exactly. It's described as a kind of temporary gathering of forces, constantly vibrating.
Right.
And get this, any kind of movement, any agitation, it creates waves.
Hmm.
We hear sound waves, feel heat waves, see light waves, and, our phones are buzzing with radio waves.
All these different waves around us.
Yeah, they all seem so different, but at their heart, they're just energy waving at different speeds, different frequencies.
And what's fascinating here is that this fundamental energetic nature of reality is precisely where our source material mechanisms of mediumship starts.
The one by André Luiz, channeled through Chico Xavier.
That's the one. Our listener was really intrigued by it. It sort of aims to clarify mediumship by drawing parallels with, well, modern scientific understanding.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. We're going to extract the key insights from this source. We're particularly focused on understanding how mental energy and the physical world interact, especially within mediumship.
And we need to keep in mind there might be different perspectives within the text itself.
Right, and we're not just scratching the surface here. We want to see how this understanding might point towards, personal growth and maybe even meaningful service, like the source suggests.
Okay. Well, the text kicks off with a really powerful image. The universe as an enormous magnet.
Wow, okay.
Surrounded by electromagnetic forces. So it immediately sets up this framework where everything, including us, exists within this huge field of energy.
And it makes a crucial point, right, that all movement generates waves.
Yes. From the smallest vibration we can't even hear, it calls that infrasound.
Infrasound.
All the way to the thoughts firing in our brains, they all generate waves.
So our thoughts aren't just abstract ideas floating around. They're a form of actual energetic motion.
Precisely. The text describes us humans as travelers of the cosmos, immersed in this vast empire of waves.
An empire of waves, I like that.
Yeah. And our ability to perceive this huge energetic landscape is limited, it explains, by our current spiritual development and the specific frequencies we happen to be attuned to. It even touches on the limits of our physical senses, mentioning there's a whole continent of infrasound below our hearing range.
While other creatures can hear things way above us, like ultrasound.
Exactly. It's like we're only tuning into a tiny little band of the cosmic radio station.
And then the source takes us through the energy we can perceive, starting from those really low infrasounds.
Moving up through the range of sounds we actually hear, music, conversation.
And then beyond that into light.
Yes, into light, all the colors of the rainbow, and then even further. It systematically lays out the whole spectrum of electromagnetic waves.
Like infrared.
Infrared, the visible light we see, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays, and finally, cosmic rays.
Wow, that's a huge range.
It is. And the core insight here is the continuous nature of this spectrum. It reinforces the idea that these are all fundamentally the same energetic phenomenon.
Just vibrating at different frequencies or wavelengths.
Exactly. Think of it like different octaves on a piano, all part of the same musical scale, just higher or lower.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the source then looks at how science gradually figured this stuff out.
It does. It goes way back.
Like ancient history back.
Yeah, tracing the beginnings of our understanding to things like Thales of Miletus noticing static electricity when rubbing amber. Ancient observations.
Wow. Okay.
Then it touches on early thinkers like Descartes, his ideas about fundamental particles, and Newton's work exploring light.
Right. And it highlights that old debate in science, didn't it? Was light a wave or a particle?
That's right. Huygens' wave theory versus Newton's particle idea. And it mentions how early ideas, like Benjamin Franklin's thoughts on electric fluid, sort of hinted at our modern understanding.
Foreshadowing, almost.
Exactly. Then you get into the 19th century, scientists like Young and Fresnel providing really compelling evidence for light behaving like waves.
Okay, so the wave idea started winning out.
For a while, yes. And this paved the way for Maxwell's huge breakthrough, his electromagnetic theory.
That's the one that linked electricity and magnetism.
And light. He proposed that light itself is an electromagnetic wave. And later, Hertz actually generated and detected these waves, proving Maxwell right.
So a key insight there is how these seemingly separate things, electricity, magnetism, light, were actually shown to be interconnected.
Different faces of the same underlying energy.
Yeah. And the source points out that by the start of the 20th century, science knew about this world of waves all around us. But there was still a puzzle.
Right. How were atoms, these tiny building blocks of matter, actually generating these waves like heat and light? Where did they come from?
That's the big question.
And that question led to exploring the atom's inner structure. The text discusses Planck's quantum theory.
Quantum theory. Okay, that's where things get weird.
A little, yeah. It revealed that energy isn't emitted in a continuous stream, but in discrete packets, quanta.
Not smooth, but like little bursts of energy.
Exactly. Revolutionary idea. It led to Bohr's model of the atom.
Ah, the one with electrons orbiting the nucleus.
Yes, at specific energy levels.
Yeah.
And they release or absorb energy in these characteristic jumps between levels.
Those famous quantum leaps. It's like the atom has its own rules for energy.
It does. And the source then walks through a series of really important discoveries about what's inside the atom.
Like finding the actual component.
Absolutely. It mentions Crookes working with cathode rays, Ring-Sheeran discovering X-rays.
X-rays, big one.
Huge. Perrin and Thomson identifying the electron as a fundamental particle, and of course, Becquerel and the Curies with radioactivity.
Showing the atom wasn't just a solid little ball.
Not at all. It was dynamic, full of energy. These discoveries totally changed the game.
So the atom went from this simple idea to this complex little universe of its own.
Pretty much. And then scientists started figuring out how to actually change the atom itself. Transmutation?
Like alchemy, but real.
Kinda. The text mentions Rutherford performing the first artificial atomic transmutation. This led to the birth of nuclear chemistry.
And it mentions Lawrence and the Joliot-Curies.
Yes, developing the cyclotron and creating artificial radioisotopes. This really showed the immense power locked inside the atom and our growing ability to, well, mess with it.
Okay. And all this digging into the smallest bits of reality brings us back to light, right? That fundamental energy, was it a wave or was it a particle?
Exactly. That old question came back with a twist. The source explains the surprising revelation. Light has a dual nature.
Dual nature, so...
Both. Einstein's work on the photoelectric effect showed strong evidence that light can behave as particles, photons carrying specific amounts of energy.
We get particle evidence.
But at the same time, things like diffraction and interference could only be explained if light also behaved like a wave.
Mind-bending. So a key insight. Something can be both a particle and a wave, depending on how you look at it.
That's the essence of it. It's not either, it's both hand.
And this duality applies to how atoms make light, too.
Precisely. When an electron jumps to a higher energy level and then falls back down, it releases that extra energy as a photon of light.
And the size of the jump determines the color.
Exactly. The energy difference dictates the photon's energy, which determines its wavelength and color. Even gamma rays, the source explains, come from energy changes within the atom's nucleus.
It also mentions the Compton effect.
Yes, as more evidence for light acting like particles. It shows how photons lose energy when they collide with electrons, which changes their frequency, like tiny billiard balls colliding.
Okay. And then comes this really wild idea from de Broglie.
Ah, yes, de Broglie.
If light, this wave thing, could act like a particle. What about matter? Stuff we think of as particles.
Could matter act like a wave? That was his revolutionary proposal. He suggested that all matter, from electrons to stars, also has wave-like properties.
Seriously, everything has a wavelength.
He even came up with an equation for it, a truly fundamental wave-particle duality for everything in the universe.
That is a massive shift in how we see reality. Suddenly, everything has this underlying wave nature.
It was a huge paradigm shift. As the source notes, de Broglie's theory wasn't immediately accepted, but
It was proven.
later confirmed by experiments showing electrons could actually be diffracted, just like waves. This led to wave mechanics and the understanding that fundamentally the universe is a realm of oscillations, energy in motion.
So even solid matter is kind of energy waves?
That's the implication. So this whole scientific journey gives us a core takeaway: the pervasive, energetic, and wave-like nature of reality. And that's the foundation the source uses to talk about the more subtle energies in mediumship.
Right. So this whole science background helps us understand something that might seem a bit more, well, out there maybe. This idea of mental energy and the cosmic fluid.
Exactly. Having set up this picture of an energetic physical universe, the source introduces the cosmic fluid, or divine breath.
Okay, what is that exactly?
It's presented as the fundamental subtle energy that permeates and sustains everything, the very essence from which all creation arises.
Well, okay. And then it talks about mental matter, our own individual energy. How did that fit in? Mental
Mental matter is described as the unique energetic substance of each individual soul. It's constantly in motion, actively shaping temporary creations based on our spiritual needs, our need for progress.
Shaping creations with our minds.
In a sense, yes. The Source emphasizes this interplay between the Creator's vast, overarching thought and our own individual thoughts. They form what it calls a vast ocean of mental force.
So our thoughts aren't just abstract things in our heads. They're actual energetic forces moving within this cosmic ocean.
Precisely. Thought is presented as an energetic flux, manifesting as different types of waves.
Like the light spectrum, but for thoughts.
Sort of. The Source proposes a spectrum of these mental waves, from incredibly high-frequency, super-ultra-short rays associated with, say, angelic beings, down to the longer waves of human minds, and even the more fragmented waves of animals.
And it gets even more detailed, talking about mental corpuscles. What are those meant to be?
These mental corpuscles are described as the fundamental living building blocks of both physical and spiritual realities.
Like atoms, but for the mind.
It draws that analogy, yeah, but stresses they operate under a new sense, beyond our physical senses. It uses terms like mental nuclei, protons, neutrons, etc., but more as conceptual tools.
To help us grasp the idea of basic units of mental energy.
Exactly. Not necessarily literal counterparts, but analogous energetic components of consciousness.
And this mental energy, these corpuscles, they contribute to our aura, that vital halo.
Yes. The aura is depicted as being woven from these subtle energetic currents generated by our habitual thoughts. It's governed by principles similar to quantum energy and wave mechanics.
So each aura has its own frequency, its own color, like an energy signature.
Exactly, reflecting our inner emotional and mental state.
It's like we're constantly broadcasting our inner world through this energy field. The Source even compares it to Einstein's idea of a field around physical mass.
That's right. It compares the gravitational field of an object to a mental field, suggesting our mental influence diminishes with distance, like gravity, but maybe never reaches zero.
Wow, which leads to the idea of thought forms.
Yes, energetic constructs created by our emitted and reflected thoughts. These can then interact with others who are on a similar mental wavelength.
So our minds are like these incredibly powerful dynamos, generating and interacting with all this mental energy.
Precisely. The human mind is likened to a dynamo that can generate, induce changes in other fields, transform energy it receives, and even collect mental energy from its surroundings.
Okay, this understanding of mental energy then sets the stage for explaining mediumship itself, doesn't it?
It does.
And the Source uses a really helpful analogy here, comparing it to electrical circuits.
Yes. It draws a direct parallel between electrical circuits and what it calls mediumistic circuits.
Okay, how does that work?
In this analogy, the communicating spirit and the medium are like the two poles in a battery. Each has a different potential.
A different energy level.
A different capacity for specific union, as the text puts it.
And the medium's willingness to connect, their openness. That's like the wire, the conductor.
Exactly. The medium's thought of acceptance or adherence acts as that connecting conductor. It allows the mental energy to flow and establishes a kind of equilibrium between the spirit and the medium.
It even talks about resistance in these mental circuits, things that can block the connection.
Right. Just like electrical resistance hinders current flow, the Source says inhibitions, or lack of focus from the medium, act as resistance in the mediumistic circuit. It impedes the smooth flow of mental energy.
Can that cause problems?
It mentions the possibility of a magnetic discharge in the mental realm if the flow is suddenly broken, like a short circuit, maybe.
And the medium's ability to understand and relay the message. That's compared to capacitance, storing energy.
That's a good way to put it. The medium's ability to grasp concepts and interpret the information is like capacitance receiving, holding, and then relaying the spiritual resources from the spirit.
So a good connection needs a clear circuit.
Yes, the Source emphasizes the importance of a well-established circuit in organized mediumistic work, often mentioning a guiding spirit who helps manage the connection.
It's all about creating this clear pathway for mental energy exchange. Now, the Source talks about the speed and continuity of these mental currents too, comparing them to electricity.
It starts with the speed of electrical impulses, which is close to the speed of light, incredibly fast.
Right.
Then it introduces the idea that mental currents can operate even faster, ultra fast.
Faster than light.
That's the implication. It also draws an analogy between the continuous flow of electricity in a closed circuit and the sustained connection needed between a spirit and a medium during communication.
And it makes the point that you need enough energy, right? Like
Yep.
a few electrons won't power a light bulb.
Exactly. You
Right.
need billions. The source says a sufficient quantity of mental energy is needed for continuous, effective, mediumistic currents.
It keeps coming back to these analogies: hydraulic, electrical, mediumistic circuits.
Yeah, highlighting the parallels. Water flow, electrical flow, mediumistic current, pressure, potential difference, psychic attunement, obstacles, resistance, the medium's inhibitions.
But the medium isn't just a passive wire, are they? Their
Yeah.
own will matters.
Absolutely crucial. The source stresses the importance of the medium's conscious intention and the need for psychic attunement in noble mediumistic work.
What does that involve?
Minimizing distractions, cultivating responsibility, a genuine willingness to serve. But it also reminds us these analogies have limits.
Right, spiritual effects aren't exactly like electricity.
No, there are aspects with no direct physical parallel.
And just like you can't store electricity or water forever without issues, the source suggests mental currents shouldn't just be accumulated.
That's right. They're meant to be directed, used. Hoarding them can lead to imbalances.
Okay. Now, science shows us that electricity and magnetism are closely linked. Does the source suggest that applies to mental currents too?
It does. It explains that electrical currents cause magnetism physically and proposes that mental currents, being energetic, also have a magnetic quality.
How does it explain that?
It mentions electron spins in atoms. In materials like iron, random spins create tiny magnetic regions called domains.
Little magnets inside the material.
Right. When they all line up, the material becomes a magnet with a larger field. The source then draws an analogy to a fundamental magnetic field in the realm of mental energy.
So our mental energy has this magnetic aspect, influencing how we attract and interact with other energies.
That's the idea. Which leads into the discussion about the brain. The source compares it to a kind of mental energy generator.
Or a power plant for thoughts.
A very sophisticated one, yeah. A self-regulating generator, far beyond our current tech, capable of generating, transforming, and processing mental energy.
How does it do that?
It describes microscopic power plants, specialized cells, where the spirit interacts with mental matter to produce these currents.
And different parts of the brain are involved.
It mentions areas of the cortex for vision, hearing, memory, etc., linking them not just to physical senses, but also to our higher moral capacities.
Our moral compass, you mean?
Exactly. The text also talks about mental energy building up, like voltage rising, until it can be directed towards a goal.
But just like a real generator can fail, our mental energy flow can get blocked.
Yes. The source identifies reasons for this denial of mental currents, drawing parallels to generator problems.
Like what?
Lack of inherent magnetism in less developed or spiritually inactive minds, inverted circuits from obsessive thinking, or physical brain issues from illness or neglect.
It even mentions animal minds briefly.
Yeah, noting their currents are focused more on basic survival, while higher animals show more complex perceptions. It also touches on how mental agents, these energy waves, play a role in nerve communication, coordinating bodily functions.
But human mental current is seen as more complex, more elevated.
Definitely.
Now, we can't talk mental energy without the aura again, that field around us. What's its role here?
The aura is described as this electromagnetic field surrounding us, incarnate or discarnate. It contains our unique energy radiations, reflecting our thoughts, desires, feelings.
And our mental waves extend out through it.
Yes, influencing those in harmony with us and attracting similar influences back, like an energetic echo chamber.
The source uses a cool analogy here, the brain as a TV camera.
Yeah, it compares how the brain processes sensory info and forms mental images to how a TV camera captures and transmits pictures.
Converting light to signals.
Right, and the brain converting sensory input into neural signals, transmitting mental images. It even compares brain cells to transmitter-receiver parts, noting the brain's ability to simultaneously send and receive is far more advanced.
And ultimately, it's our will that directs all this.
The lever of will, as the source calls it, the soul's tool for managing mental currents developed over lifetimes of experience.
Okay, this all ties into conditioned reflexes, doesn't it? How our habits shape our mental world.
The text really emphasizes that. Every mind vibrates in its own sphere of stimuli and thoughts, generating this huge potential of mental electromagnetic forces.
And reflection is key. We absorb what resonates with us.
Exactly. We spontaneously assimilate mental currents that harmonize with our own, and we influence others with our thoughts, too.
And conditioned reflexes, those automatic responses, they play a big part in mediumship too, even unconsciously.
The source suggests so. As we emit our own thought waves, we naturally attract and receive resonant influences. This can be the start of mediumistic connections, even without conscious intent.
So even if we feel trapped physically, our thoughts are free to choose positive or negative paths.
That's a key point. Thought remains free. It stresses developing discernment like a helm to navigate this ocean of mental currents, seeking good company, spiritually speaking.
But not all mental energy exchange is positive. The source mentions indiscriminate hypnotic phenomena, like stage hypnotism.
Yes, it uses vulgar or unethical hypnotism as an example of exploiting conditioned reflexes for mental energy exchange without higher purpose. The hypnotist creates a closed circuit of attention and suggestion.
And this can happen remotely, through media.
The text suggests so. If someone deeply surrenders their attention to suggestions, say from radio or TV, they can be influenced, emit specific mental waves, form thought forms based on the hypnotist's will.
Wow. It mentions different states of hypnosis.
Lethargy, catalepsy, somnambulism, and the release of mental agglutinins that can sort of cloud the spirit's own control. Interestingly, people respond differently based on their own mental makeup.
And deeper suggestion can implant commands.
Yes, simple tasks to be performed after waking, absorbed by the passive mental wave.
This idea of mental energy transfer continues with electrical and mental charges, using static electricity as an analogy.
Right, comparing indiscriminate mediumship or popular hypnosis to the random way static electricity builds up and discharges, like rubbing a pen on wool.
And it connects this to bigger things, like lightning.
Exactly. Free electrons build up in the atmosphere, potential difference increases, then bam, lightning. Also, solar flares disrupting Earth's magnetic field, affecting brains and electronics.
And the parallel is currents of mental electrons, building charges in our own fields.
Or wandering between people, attracted to similar charges or imbalances. Our concentrated thoughts create these inductive states, attracting similar thoughts.
So balance is key. Balanced thoughts.
Crucial. Thought circulates constantly in our field, influencing ourselves and others. We each have this inexhaustible energy source in thought, projecting into our aura.
And we need to channel it constructively.
Right. Constructive currents lead to equilibrium, joy through purpose. Destructive ones arise from inner imbalance. Accumulated tension, negative thought forms can attract negative influences, leading to obsession, bad choices.
So failing to use our mental energy positively can make us vulnerable.
Yes, leading to degeneration, susceptibility to what it calls perturbed intelligences, even vampirization by negative entities causing dysfunctions, illness.
That leads to the idea that everyday human interaction is also a kind of magnetic influence.
The text contrasts stage hypnosis with the constant, often unconscious suggestion we exert and receive daily. Everyone practices suggestion. Everyone yields to influence to some degree.
Like parental influence on children.
A powerful example of enduring mental patterns, unless stronger experiences cause internal shifts. It also mentions other inductive centers, like spiritual groups with deep affinities.
So we're all constantly influencing and being influenced energetically.
Pretty much. The source states we are all mediums in that sense, reflecting forces we assimilate via focused thought. It stresses perseverance and good, as negative habits create reflexes drawing us to negative currents.
Okay, so now the source moves into specific kinds of mediumship, starting with physical effects.
It talks about spiritual symbioses, where discarnates influence incarnates they're strongly linked to, creating a dynamic like hypnotizer hypnotized on an energy level.
And mediumship of physical effects.
Happens in people predisposed to disassociating their psychic forces more easily, manifests physically in varying degrees.
Like raps and movements. Those often involve less evolved spirits.
The source suggests so, yes. Lower-level phenomena often involve less evolved discarnates attuned to naturally sensitive mediums, sometimes children. Interestingly, these can sometimes be stopped by moral authority, prayer, or command.
So it's more mechanical, less about the medium's development.
Often, yes. Then there's the teleguided medium.
The one who provides ectoplasm, that mysterious substance.
Yes, they readily exteriorize ectoplasm, this physicalized psychic energy. More evolved discarnates can use it for physical phenomena.
With guidance.
Often with a guide, a more evolved spirit overseeing the energy exchange for good purposes. This can lead to materialization circles, telekinesis, visible ectoplasm. But importantly, the medium's own mental field always acts as a filter.
But it's not always simple.
Yeah.
The source acknowledges challenges.
Absolutely. It notes the complexity, how phenomena don't fit neat equations. It addresses the frustrations of researchers finding mediumship obscure, even extravagant, leading some to doubt survival after death.
And it brings in that important principle, the law of the mental field. What's that again?
It dictates that conscious beings only assimilate influences they are attuned to. It underscores individual responsibility for our mental state and what we attract.
So moral elevation is key.
Crucial for incarnates to better understand and work with these energies, potentially aiding improving immortality scientifically.
Okay, then the source shifts to intellectual effects of mediumship, starting with habit.
Yeah, using everyday examples, habit as a crystallized conditioned reflex. Like seeking news that fits our interests, business, crime, whatever, we automatically assimilate related info and think along those lines.
So we're influenced by our inclinations, but still responsible for our actions.
Precisely. We're accountable for what stems from our own mental waves. Intellectual mediumship is the association of incarnate and discarnate minds, more subjectively. It can emerge anytime, even from birth sometimes.
It sounds like this subtle mental influence is everywhere.
The source suggests millions speakers, writers, artists have been unknowingly influenced by spirits throughout history for various reasons.
How does disciplined mediumship differ, like in Spiritism?
Prayer, for instance, creates a conditioned reflex for connecting with aligned spirits. But developing mediums often go through doubt, mistaking external thoughts for their own.
So the medium needs to cultivate their own inner life, virtue and knowledge.
Absolutely. The quality of their receptivity affects the clarity of communication, whether it's psychography, incorporation, inspiration, premonition. The conjugation of mental waves is always present.
Now, ideoplasty, that sounds powerful. Thought creating form.
Yes, the power of thought to materialize forms, which can persist depending on the thought wave's intensity. Both discarnate and incarnate beings have this power to exteriorize ideas.
How does the hypnotic sleep example illustrate it?
The hypnotist's suggestion creates a mental image in the subject's mind via concentrated mental rays and reflection, like a movie projection. That image is mentally real for the subject due to their own spirit's oscillations.
And this relates to why researchers shouldn't interfere too much in ectoplasm sessions.
Exactly. Interference can disrupt the energy circuit between the discarnate operator and the medium. Asking for a bracelet during an arm materialization, for instance, could make the medium's thought inadvertently shape the ectoplasm that way, hindering the intended spiritual work.
Ideoplasty is also big in intellectual mediumship, causing confusion for beginners.
Repeated thoughts can make inexperienced mediums perceive mental images as real situations or personalities. It also has a negative side in lower magic circles, where degraded entities imprint enslaving ideas on vulnerable minds.
Accepting negative suggestions creates problems.
It leads individuals to project unworthy images, creating taboos, keeping them captive to ignorance. Suggestion is potent, linking the soul to its inner creations, forcing it to experience the consequences, good or bad.
Psychometry is another fascinating one, reading impressions from objects.
The faculty of perceiving hidden aspects of places or reading memories from objects' documents.
How does it work, according to the source?
The mental wave of certain individuals in deep concentration, a closed circuit, carries advanced perception agents, extending senses beyond the physical body.
Like intuition on steroids.
Sort of. Nervous fluid or psychic force detaches, incorporates into exteriorized mental rays, shaping a perception field, granting new sensory powers to the spirit.
It compares it to hypnotism again.
Where sensitives easily release nervous force under suggestion, feeling things outside their body or losing sensation. In psychometry mediums, conditioned reflexes like prayer can displace this force, allowing connection to other vibratory realms.
And we all have a bit of this potential.
Right.
Gut feelings.
Yes, instinctive sympathy or antipathy. Through reflection, we sense if someone or something is favorable or unfavorable. The psychometry medium automatically disarticulates nervous force from some centers, transferring potential to their mental oscillations.
So it requires collaboration.
Harmonious collaboration with discarnate and incarnate participants. Thought forms are also key. Objects are charged with memories, emotions, creating inductive resources for the medium.
Like the example of the handkerchief from a deceased person.
Exactly. The object acts as a mediator, strongly induced. Merit and positive companionship are vital. Negative influences hinder it. While discarnates are important, matter itself carries vibrations, enabling unusual observations for those with deeper senses like clairvoyance.
Okay, the last mechanism, out-of-body experiences, testamento. How's that explained?
Again, using the analogy of deep hypnosis. A whitish vapor, the spiritual body, escapes the physical, often forming a duplicate nearby.
And the detached person can travel.
Move about, go to distant places, gather information. There's a tenuous link, like a radar wave, connecting the spiritual and physical bodies.
And this happens during sleep, too, even if we don't remember.
Yes. During natural sleep, the soul, using deeper vision and temporarily detached, can revisit memories, experience consequences of actions like organ discomfort or remorse.
And our desires direct where consciousness goes.
Desire acts as the conditioned reflex. The farmer returns to fields, artist to work, mother to children, delinquent to their place of sorrow. Waking memories are often chaotic, fragmented.
And we can receive inspiration during sleep.
Yes, especially creative types attract inspiration from aligned discarnates. Noble spirits offer positive motives. Less evolved minds offer themes resonating with negativity.
So our mind is active during sleep, interacting energetically.
Passively or actively registering impressions. Results often manifest as inspiration upon waking, though conscious recall is rare. Many earthly requests are addressed during the asker's sleep state.
But the physical brain doesn't always retain the memory,
leading to symbolic images, fragmented recall, sudden intuitions. True detachment from earthly concerns is rare for most, due to our evolutionary needs.
but some can consciously explore.
Those who train themselves can explore spiritual planes, become valuable instruments for benevolent spirits, liaisons between realms. Great mystics are examples. Study is vital, as understanding is limited by discernment, by the law of the mental field.
Finally, healing mediumship. Mental factors are key here.
Crucial for sustaining life's agents, influencing their quality. The mind's power can even influence antibody formation. The blood system reflects the spiritual body's energies, drawn from the cosmic fluid via respiration.
The thought can direct cellular processes.
Facilitate movement for defense. Even improvise elements against pathogens with help from deep consciousness. If the mind can be hypnotized, corpuscular entities can perhaps be more readily magnetized for cellular adjustment.
And the foundation is pure feeling.
Paramount. Pure fraternal feelings distinguish it from personal magnetism. There are interpreters of higher spirituality dedicated to helping the sick, encouraging their own healing.
So the medium needs spiritual hygiene.
Absolutely. Study human constitution, yes, but the healer's spiritual state directly impacts the patient. Noble habits, simplicity, humility are key, like the tungsten filament letting the power plant's energy shine.
Trust between healer and patient creates a link.
A subtle link for aid from the higher sphere to flow, proportionate to the merits of both. The laying on of hands, the passe, stimulates the sick person's mental waves to assimilate vital resources received.
The source counters fears about this.
Asserts incarnate and discarnate aren't antagonistic races. Communication requires shared evolutionary climates, mental attunement. We share senses with spirits in nearby spheres, can sometimes detach or act as their agents.
It contrasts animism and true mediumship.
Animism, being phenomena from the medium's own spirit, uses the analogy of hypnotic regression. Suggests mental alienation often involves real discarnate connections, not just simulation.
Advocating compassion for those in animistic states.
Yes. Treat them as suffering or disturbed spirits needing help. Fraternal aid can readjust their mental waves, extending to influencing discarnates, restoring balance. The spiritist's task is improving mental impulses through education, love, support.
And negative attachments have consequences.
A spirit attached to earthly pleasures might influence a sensitive, then face consequences after death, tormented by their own disoriented mental waves reacting on their spiritual body, leading to disharmonies, maybe morbid tendencies in future lives.
But prayer offers a positive connection.
A powerful conditioned reflex, even in stillness, connecting to higher spheres. A sublime reflection, compelling emission of the spirit's purest elements. It corrects consciousness through magnetizing waves from heaven.
We've made progress with physical disease, but the psychological atmosphere is complex.
We're like travelers in a jungle of heterogeneous thoughts, learning to find our path, refine our mental projections through moral and intellectual growth. Use prayer for inspiration, alignment, like consulting experts for health or knowledge.
Prayer creates a circuit for regeneration.
The soul regenerates cells, reflects illuminating suggestions from nobler discarnates. It lifts thoughts, providing transforming ideas from benevolent guides, counteracting negative vibrations.
It even mentions Jesus.
His early understanding among doctors, his first public act transforming water to wine, physical effect, multiplying loaves, calming storms associated with spiritual messengers,
And healing.
diverts ailments, paralysis, blindness, ulcers, mental imbalance. But he emphasized the individual's own energy. Your faith has healed you. According to your faith, let it be done to you.
So to really boil it down, this source emphasizes this profound interconnectedness, physical, mental, spiritual. Energy and thought are fundamental forces shaping reality, especially in mediumship and spiritual growth.
What's truly insightful, I think, is how this text tries to bridge that gap between, science and spiritual phenomena. It suggests the principles governing the physical world, energy, vibration, resonance, also operate, maybe more subtly, in consciousness and our interactions beyond the physical.
Right. So here's a thought to maybe leave you with. Considering this deep dive into the energetic nature of our thoughts in the world, what are the implications of our own mental broadcasts and receptions every day? How are we, maybe without realizing it, shaping our reality and influencing others just by what we're thinking and feeling?
That's a powerful question.
And maybe, how can we intentionally cultivate more positive, more constructive mental currents? Not just for ourselves, but maybe to contribute to a more harmonious world.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about, doesn't it? Regarding these unseen forces and the nature of consciousness itself. Invites more exploration.